Hello, everyone. So, Izzy and I watched the final episode of The Owl House, and this is our thoughts, our reaction to it. There are some things that we really enjoyed about it, there are some things that we were a little bit more critical about. Ultimately, though, we both had a really positive experience watching this episode and a really positive experience watching this show. We really fell in love with this show, especially during season two, and we're just so grateful to Dana for creating such a wonderful story and to everyone else who was involved in the show. So, without further ado, you'll hear the music and then you'll hear us chat about Watching and Dreaming, the final episode of The Owl House. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Determination, Deliberation, and Dragons. I'm Peter,
And I'm Izzy.
and we finally got around to watching the final episode of The Owl House Season 3, and we're going to chat about it.
Yeah, watching and dreaming. It was mostly me who got around to it. I was in mourning before I even watched the episode.
Yeah, I think I watched it as it was released on Disney Channel, which was kind of fun.
That's fun. I knew it was released and couldn't bring myself to watch it for a little bit because I just couldn't bring myself to have the show be over yet.
Indeed, it was a good show. But, so I'm curious, I don't know if we should save this until the end, but I'm just curious, what were your general thoughts? What would you rate this episode out of 10?
Oh, out of 10, I haven't thought, I don't know yet about that. So maybe I could wait until after our conversation to give it a number rating.
Okay.
But I felt like it was a resolution. It didn't feel like when it was over, it wasn't like, why are the credits rolling? We're not done yet. Like, they did very clearly resolve the story, and I wish they had more time to tell the story, of course. And, of course, there were certain parts of the story that I wish were fleshed out a lot more, especially with Hunter and Bellows' backstory and everything. But I think what we got was pretty good. I'm a fan overall.
I think it is pretty resolved. I think that's a good word for it. And I feel like there was so much concern about, could they resolve everything? And I think they did. Yes, there's stuff that I wish that we got to see more of as well. But even that stuff I don't think was left unresolved. Even with Hunter, what happens to him afterwards? Who does he stay with now? What's happening with Willow? That was all resolved, even though, we could have seen more. So I feel like I've seen it twice, and the first time I saw it, I was like, I'm not sure what I think about this episode, and the second time I felt much better about it. Like what they ended up doing with a lot of these characters.
Yeah. Of course, from here on out, I'll say a full on spoiler warning, but I think Ida's ending that they gave her was the most one that stretched plausibility for me. I loved the endings that they gave for everyone, but they made Ida become the head, well, I think it said headmaster of this university. I'm like, I don't know if Ida can handle that level of responsibility. Like maybe being one of the professors, the wacky professor, she could totally handle that. But I think that level of being the entire headmaster, I don't know if she's demonstrated that she has the skills and knowledge for that yet. Although I'm sure Professor Bump, or former headmaster, because he's retired now, I guess he could help a bit. But I think she might be biting off a little bit more than she can chew, just based on what we've seen of her skills so far. Other than that, I have no complaints about the endings. It's more that I just really wanted to find out more about what was going on in the past with Hunter, his first iteration, the original Caleb. We don't know ultimately what happened with Caleb, which, I mean, it's not even like you can say it would be too dark for this show, because they got to some pretty dark places. So I would like to know what happened, and that's just one of the biggest questions that I'm leaving wishing was answered, but I guess it will have to be answered through fanfiction.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was answered. This is again like going back to the whole. I feel like they resolved most of it, but they could have done more. Like I think we generally know what happened with Caleb, right? Like he went to he met that witch Evelyn, who we don't really know anything about. He probably was like, "Oh, the Boiling Isles is okay. Like witches aren't all that bad. Like, you know, everything that I've known about witches in the early colonies in the US, like maybe I was wrong about it." And then something happened with him and Bellos, and they had a disagreement, and Bellos is probably like, "How dare you get close to these witches?" So like I think
Well,
we
that's the
can.
part that I want to know about.
I know, but I feel like so we know the broad strokes. We just there's a lot of specifics that if they had time they could have done. So like again, I feel like it's reasonably resolved, especially like considering what they had the time to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice to have more.
Yeah. Oh, I am thinking another thing that I wasn't as keen on. I mean, I guess in general, our Owl House episodes have been like the collector is a question mark. I don't know. I still don't quite know if I like how they handled it because they very clearly played on the fact that, like, mentally and emotionally, he has the mind of a child and, like, he was trapped in some kind of magical trap. So he doesn't have much life experience to draw on. So it makes sense that he'd be pretty ignorant. But also, I still think they let him off just a little too easy in a way. I mean, he did go back up to the stars to his own people or whatever. It just felt like I was never a big fan. I was never that interested in what they were doing with his character.
Yeah, I mean, I've complained about the collector before. I
Yeah.
think this is the I think this is the best episode with him though. I thought like it was just interesting cuz like I love the whole Luce and Bellos dynamic, and it was interesting seeing Luce finally able to spend time with him, and like where Bellos is whispering in his ear and like trying to manipulate him. Luce is just, accepting him and being like, "Hey, like you don't understand how to make friends necessarily. I didn't either, and I'm not going to show you how to make friends, but I'll show you how I made friends." I think before it was frustrating because the collector kind of came out of nowhere and took away from the Bellos Luce story. And in this episode, I can kind of see how he just emphasizes like the differences between those two characters. So I really appreciated that. Although again, like it took me the second time to watch to like kind of get to that point. The first time I was like, "Oh, this is a little too much collector going on." And even like I still don't really like the game playing thing, and they're just doing Jenga and like Pac-Man, and like that was kind of weird and
Yeah, that wasn't my
unnecessary.
favorite part. I thought they could have been a little bit more creative with the game playing. I think they took that a little too literally, and people have already. I've seen iterations of that where they're like, let's take kids. I haven't actually seen Squid Game, but there are iterations, including Squid Game, of like, let's just take this kids' game and make it major in some way. And
Yeah,
it didn't feel special to me.
no, it was kind of weird, and like I could have skipped all the stuff before that too, with like the weird dream where Luz is like, "Oh, like you're not real. Like this
Yeah,
is
that
all."
part, I thought Luce's dream specifically was the least interesting because the one that Ida had and that King had to me, like it was very obviously the trope of like facing your fears in a nightmare form, but Luce's was like, how can you not immediately tell this is a fake dream, Luce? Because it just felt, at least it, being a viewer, like I have no reason to believe that she would not immediately. She figured it out eventually, but I had no reason to believe that she would not immediately figure it out because it didn't feel real.
Yeah, it felt like they were just trying to find a way for like Luce and the Collector to finally interact. I guess they succeeded, but I just didn't. I don't know. I didn't like how they did it.
Yeah.
But
Mainly, my, I guess, quibble with it is that I just don't like the perpetual child character that he is because he's thousands of years old at this point, or who knows exactly, at least hundreds of years old. So the fact that he hasn't progressed mentally or emotionally whatsoever, like not even into adolescence, annoys me. Because even if he had like no external stimuli other than someone like Bellows, it doesn't really make sense to me that he wouldn't have matured at least in some way. And they could have used him like leaning on the childishness as sort of, some kind of psychological regressive coping mechanism. But they just went with he's immortal basically, so he'll be a child for as long as we want him to be and have exactly that amount of understanding of his actions, which I'm not really a fan of because it's not like he was literally just birthed by the stars. He has been on the Boiling Isles for a long time, clearly, since whenever the Titans were still alive. So
Yeah.
it kind of stretched the believability for me that he would be that childlike to that degree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. To me, it's more of an issue of like, I just don't think he's that interesting of a character by himself.
I just feel like, I mean, I guess it's sort of like a Peter Pan version of like Peter Pan chooses, I guess, kind of chooses. I've never read the book, but I guess he kind of chooses to stay young forever. But like you can tell his understanding from movie versions of him that I have seen. He's got sort of an older understanding than like a 10-year-old would literally have. But the collector doesn't really seem to hold both the immortal view with the child view kind of mindset that I think other kind of fantastical immortal beings can have.
I don't know. I'm fine with it. I think the main thing is I think the Owl House does characters really well when they have characters like together playing off one another. And like I just don't see where the collector really fits in all that well. So maybe if they had like a full season 3 or like even season 4, you could incorporate the collector and like make him an important part of Luce's story and Bellus's story like a little bit more than they did. And then maybe I would be more accepting of his character. And that's why I liked him in this specific episode like the most, because we finally get like some sort of dynamic and he emphasizes Bellos and Luce a little bit more. But all of just like maybe these collector people, how they age and how they progress, like I'm fine with that. It's a fantasy world. They can like progress and mature however the writers want. Like that's not a problem with me. Yeah, that's really all my thoughts on the collector.
Yeah, I mean, I did think he was at his most interesting when he was obviously a foil for Luce and Bellos with that big fight where he was like taking her advice literally and being like, "I'm going to bring peace to Bellos. He'll understand. He'll listen,"
That was pretty
uh,
great.
which was very ironic and fun, and also like really good at driving home to kind of like the moral complexity of just like flag of peace to somebody who's not willing to listen, not willing to compromise or do anything in
Yeah.
good faith with you. But I think it would have been better if they had tried to use that angle earlier on, where the collector could have been more of a, like, I guess he was acting more as sort of a just random blank wall when he could have been more of a mirror or echoing some of the things that Bellows said, because he's been around Bellows for who knows how long at this point, and somehow it doesn't seem to have affected or influenced him, which I think it should have, at least to the point where the collector would be responding to Bellows and you could see like Bellows says something really evil and the collector just like doesn't pick up on, maybe Bellows says something that has nuances to it and the collector just totally misses that and he's like, "Yep, we're going to crush him."
Yeah, or even if like the collector, I mean, his whole issue like in the second episode was just like he wants to have fun, and he doesn't really understand like mortality, which okay, interesting, but not really relevant to what's going on. It would have been cool, like you said, to see him be a little bit more impacted by his time with Bellows. And maybe, like, when Luce meets up with him finally, like, the collector is a little bit more distrusting and it takes a little bit more, like, prodding to get to him. Which if you had cut out like everything like with the games and like before that, maybe you have a little bit more time like of Luce actually spending time with him and talking with him. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if they had shown the collector like persevering in his childlike innocence that he has through all of his time and interactions with Belos, and like seeing it was more of a conscious choice, like to just, see things on the brighter side of things and not kind of allow himself to be poisoned by all of Belos's awfulness. I think that would have been a more interesting dynamic than just showing them as two separate entities that don't influence each other in any way. Like the collector could have been, I mean, he clearly didn't get along with Belos when he was still trapped, but it didn't seem as if the collector was choosing to react in any particular way other than just to like be petty.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but it was fine. I mean, the rest of the episode I think I really enjoyed for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what did you think of so like after we finish up, Luce beats the collector in giant Jenga and then starts showing him around the doing the tour of the Boiling Isles. Like from that point on, what are some things that like stood out to you?
Well, now we know from the very end of the Boiling Isles that there's going to be a part that's hanging sideways, sort of, or vertical,
Yes, the
forever
arm.
now. And that is very interesting to think about, but also I didn't realize, I guess we hadn't fully explored the Boiling Isles. Like we've seen aerial views of it, but I hadn't realized it was quite as big as it is. I also just kind of assumed that there were, I mean, we know there are other islands, like wherever the collector people live on their own island, but I always assumed the Boiling Isles, like itself, had other satellite islands, and we didn't see any of those specifically, so I don't know if they just don't exist or if they just weren't shown. But I loved that we got to see more of the actual island, and I still wonder if the red grass stayed. I don't know why. My mind focuses on some strange things, but I was thinking it would be kind of neat and symbolic if it stayed, because it's also like the color of blood. But that's kind of normal in the Boiling Isles.
If the red grass like stayed after what?
Like when Luce was doing her big magical fight thing, and all of Belos's goop was like disappeared and it became this red grass type stuff. Like, I think it would be neat if it stayed along there so people could look at it and be like, this is where that goop was, but now it's this.
Well, the red grass was always there. She was just like regrowing it. When they first get to the Boiling Isles in the second episode, and Willow's like, "Hello, red grass. Like I haven't seen you in a long time." Like that just is the color of their grass, which I guess
Yeah.
I never noticed that in like the first two seasons. But I think that wasn't like a loose specific grass. That just is the Boiling Isles grass.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like the grass became red because of her, but like it grew like, I think on the platform or whatever, where the goop, Belos goop was. It
Mm-hmm.
grew on the platform and in places where there hadn't been grass before. At least that's what I remember. I've only seen it once. So perhaps there was already grass there, but I thought it was like every spot that was covered became replaced with the grass, even if there hadn't been grass there. But this
That
is
I
a
don't
small
know.
point. I also noticed that the Grudgeby field was pristine, even when Belos was taking over everything, or like after when they were doing the rebuilding, and I was like, they knew what to protect the Grudgeby field. But I also think it was just really interesting to see the way that the characters grew out of that whole rebuilding process. Especially Mytholomew. I wasn't expecting him to be, as awesome of a character as he turned out to be.
I don't know if I would call him awesome yet, but he's become better.
Yeah, I mean, he just has much more potential that they showed than I ever expected.
Yeah, he might actually be a good leader, according to Gus. So that was definitely cool. He's grown a lot since season one.
Yeah, and he was doing some kind of architect thing y. I don't know exactly what in the final scenes.
He's helping rebuild the school. It looked like they were doing like a museum wing, which is why
Yeah.
Lilith was there.
Oh, I thought it was like, I guess I missed that it was like part of the school. I just thought she was building her own separate building. But yeah, I love that for her. I'm so happy.
That was really cool. I mean, everything like in that final like couple moments in the credit scene like was really cool.
Yeah. But I mean, definitely one of the standouts was we finally get to see King's dad. And it's, I guess, some sort of avatar personification of his dad, because it's clearly not literally the Titan. But very interesting to see the way they chose to depict him.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean I think he's really cool, and it was a great scene. But it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have done a loaf bread pun as my last words, but I guess he knows his son well.
He's been watching. I mean, it's kind of nice like seeing that. And I think it would have been weird like if he said something just really meaningful and impactful that like wouldn't mean much to King. I don't cuz King like doesn't really know him, and like sure he would
Mhm.
love to know him, but I think it's nicer that Papa Titan said something like that meant more to King, and like shows King that like his dad loves him, rather than like, oh, here's something that's important to know about me, son, before I like leave forever.
I didn't
So
take it quite as that. I was just thinking like the more generic of like, I love you and I'll always be proud of you, and whatever you do, I'm supporting you from the afterlife or whatever. I think that was more what I had assumed he would say, and then it was a bread pun.
yeah, I kind of love the bread pun version better.
I
I
think it
could,
matches King's personality.
yeah, which is why again, like I think he said it, and just showing King like that he has been watching, and that he's been caring for him this whole time, even if he can't. I mean, I guess he is there, even if he can't be there in the way that he wants to be there.
You can walk on your father, but you can't be with him.
The father literally supports him.
Well, also, I did love the little tidbit where he said, "I'm the father and the mother, but you can call me dad if you want." To just throw that like genderless aspect in there, which I think is really interesting, and has me wondering more questions about Titan society and reproduction. But we're not going to go there.
I don't know. Definitely interesting and like a fun callback to. I think that was no, that wasn't the first episode. That was the Grom episode where King says that he's
Wait,
king
what
and
does he say?
I am now king and queen, best of both things.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So I don't know. That was interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting the way they tied it in. Although it does make me wonder, like, if his father was stuck in the whole in between space, how did he ever get out of that to deliver the letter? And why did he choose whatever moment he chose to deliver the letter, which was then eaten by Hootie?
Oh, he never delivered the letter. That wasn't him.
What?
That was the guy. Remember they go to the island of all like the Titan trappers?
Yeah, wait. Oh, it was that guy?
It was that guy.
Oh, I
Not
guess
not the
my.
small guy who was like the head of the trappers. It was the big guy whose name I'm forgetting.
Oh, okay. It's been a while since I saw that.
Yeah, no, it looks. I mean, that guy does look a lot like King's dad. Come to mention it,
Okay, my mind assumed they were the same because it's been a while.
nope. Indeed, they are
Okay,
not.
no questions anymore.
Yeah, no. So he hasn't been able to escape. I don't know. It is kind of weird though, because like his actual body is, obviously we see it in the Boiling
It's the
Isles. It is the
entire.
Isles.
Yeah.
So like, how? Why is his mind there? Maybe that's just to show like the audience that like, I mean, one, to have someone for Luce to talk to in the in between space, but also like to show that she hasn't died, because that was a thing like in the show Amphibia. Have you seen that?
No, although I know there is a character that spoiler does actually die, which makes me want to watch it because it's a kids show and they actually kill a character.
Um. So,
Does she not die?
can I spoil it? Because it's interesting to like this conversation.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So at the end of Amphibia, spoilers everyone. So Anne Boon Choi, the main character, does indeed die, and then she meets like some deity thing that is like it takes the form of a cat, and it's just like, yes, I have made a copy of you, and I will send you back. And Anne's like, well, that's gonna last with me like for the rest of my whole life. And then the copy gets sent back, but it's treated as if it's just Anne. So like Anne did die, but now they have this copy. And it's kind of weird.
Does it have her consciousness, or is it?
I don't know. I mean, it basically is her,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the same mannerisms and its same personality and everything. But she did technically die. So with Luce now, I mean, something happened to Luce's body, but like, I mean, one, you have the evidence of like Bellows, there's something wrong with his body for sure, and yet he's alive. And now you have the Titan who, like, literally the Boiling Isles is the body, and the heart is still beating, and yet you have this, the Titan avatar, as you said, in this in between space. So I think it's just implying that like Luce hasn't died, because the Titan at that point hadn't died either.
Yeah,
I think like Luce just is alive, and like her
yeah.
body went through some sort of transformation, but it's still her, which I thought was interesting and nice because I don't want her to die.
Mm-hmm. I mean, her little light bubble things that she turned into, I thought, well, one, symbology, so good with her name means light,
She is
and
the
turned
Luce.
into light when she died. But and also the way she floated past everybody, and Camila cried when she was still a puppet. Um, but I do think it was more of like her essence became energy in a different way, the light bubbles, and then the light bubbles went into the limbo space, which also resembles very much the space that you travel between to get between the worlds. So it's not really an afterlife type of space. It's just another one of the planes, because the collector also lives on some other starry plane. We don't even know if it's actually, I'm saying space, but it's something else.
Yeah, I don't
And
know. That's still a weird one.
yeah, and with all the cubey things and the swirly colors, it's like exactly like when Luce was trapped in there, traveling between the human world and trying to talk with her mom. So it's very much not the place you go when you're necessarily dead. It's just another plane.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that is like her physical body that is there.
Yeah. Obviously, some transformation with the Titan magic happened.
For sure, she was helped out.
Yeah. I loved her hair. It was so good. And then it just went back to regular hair. And I was like, why? No, none of the changes stay?
Oh, the Titan
Except.
Ida Luce. that was that was an interesting look. Although, like, I think it was really cool because like she did look like a mix of Ida and King, which was like just nice. They've taught her so much.
Yeah. No, I mean, the strange looking eyes and everything I was not as much of a fan of. But I just wish she had lovely hair. And I'm not as much of a fan of her season 3 haircut. But also, I think it might be, hair is symbology. It just shows she's going through a rough time, and I think her hair got better in the final closing scenes. But back to the limbo. Yeah, I guess it's just more of a in between space for your energy to reside before you go one place or another.
Yeah,
That's the best I can think of.
yeah. So I was fine with all that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And like I did love it when she came back and just like, destroyed everything. I think she was really cool. I think her and King Anita did a great job cleaning up
Yeah,
the
she
Boiling
had her
Isles.
Azura moment.
Absolutely. Just a bit terrifying. She's literally like pulling on Belos's ribs, which was scary. but um no, it was cool just seeing her fight with the other two, and I loved like seeing her work together with them. Like, yes, the Titan's magic helped her a lot, but like without King Anita there, like she couldn't do anything. So I thought that was really great to see. Came around full circle.
Yeah. And I like that. I mean, she was still OP, but she didn't immediately get the powers, like how to use them. Like Ida had to show her, like, because she's always had to use her glyph stuff. She had Ida show her, this is how you draw the circle because you don't need to like do the little symbol things. And
Yeah.
then did the like combo howl magic spell thing with
The weh.
with King. Yeah, the weh.
That
And
was
I
great.
like that they were able to combine their knowledge and skills together
Yeah.
that way.
I mean, is this the first time that Ida has actually taught loose magic?
Maybe. I mean, kind of. Also, I'm after the Titan died and she wasn't able to use the symbols anymore because it was the Titan's energy that was giving her her magic through the glyph language that we now know is unique to every Titan, which is fantastic. I do wonder if she's just in the in between time between the original Titan dying and King becoming powerful enough to, I guess, provide magic for the world again in that way. The witches can still use magic because they have their bile sacs or whatever. But was Luce just not is Luce just not able to use magic anymore in this time?
Well, she
They
can
don't,
use her staff, right?
I guess. I mean, yes, but it only does certain things. It's not like magic.
Yeah, I would assume. I mean, we can't be certain. We would need to see more. Make that happen, Disney. But I would assume she can only do like a limited amount of magic, but she can still do some stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking back to when Hunter still had his staff but didn't even have a real talisman. He could still do some things, but he clearly didn't have all the versatility of like the witches who have the magical witch
No.
sack.
Yeah, no. Flapjack helped him do some types of magic for sure. Because at the end of the day, like the palismen are also magic.
Mm-hmm.
So Hunter's just limited like when he's by himself, as is
Mm-hmm.
Luce, I would assume. I guess it all just depends on what String Bean like wants to do in any given moment.
I guess I like String Bean a little bit more in this episode, but I'm still a little bit like, why did they have to introduce a completely new mythological, not even mythological, just like completely new character that is a creature that wasn't based off of anything beforehand? Like if they had just introduced the idea to us before they introduced the talisman, I would have been like, yes, makes perfect sense for her because it can be anything. I already complained about this though in the another episode, but I like String Bean a little bit better now. Um, Very helpful to Luce.
Yeah, I think we just like also didn't get a lot of time with String Bean.
Yeah.
Then like we would like him a little bit more.
Well, I was also glad they didn't try to like overplay their hand with String Bean because I'm like, I don't like you so much that I want you to take time away from other things.
I mean, fair. I would have liked to see a little bit more from String Bean because I think the palismen are like super interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like we spent so much time. I mean, not so much time. We spent a decent amount of time with Owlbert in season one, and then Owlbert kind of just went away.
I
Um,
honestly forgot about him.
and then Flapjack is an amazing part of
Mm-hmm.
season two and season three, but like we don't really know that much about the other palismen, and it would have been nice like I feel like Flapjack and Owlbert are characters, whereas like none of the other palismen I feel the same way about. So I wish we got a little bit more from String Bean, but I think considering what we got, like again with the time restrictions, like it was fine.
Yeah. I mean, it clearly they have some sort of dialogue, and I don't know if it's that people who have palismans can't understand what other palismans say, or if it's just like sort of the golden compass rule where it's like you can only talk to your demon and they are not supposed to talk to other humans or whatever,
Hmm.
which is just a weird rule. But I don't know if it's that or if it's like they're just choosing to not talk to other human or other witches. But I thought it was very cute that they have their own secret or like special communication way.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Owlbert talks with Luce in season one. Maybe.
Maybe I would not. I do not remember.
It's been a while. No, so that would have been fine. But the other palismen who shows up in this. Did you see Hunter's new talisman?
Wait, what was it?
He has the blue jay.
Oh, what? Wait, there was a blue jay?
Go back and watch it. He has a little blue jay that's like flying around with him.
Oh, well, that's nice.
And apparently, I think Dana Terra said on like Twitter or something, like his name is Waffles.
Oh, well, I can't hate him because his name is Waffles, even if blue jays are kind of jerks.
I mean, yeah. No, it was nice because he had like the cardinal flapjack, and now he has Waffles the blue jay, which was kind of nice.
It could have been a chickadee.
I think blue jay works.
Yeah, I mean, blue jay fits more like to go from colorful bird to colorful bird.
Yeah, and especially like I feel like cardinals and blue jays often just go together in our
Mm-hmm.
like understanding in this world. So it was kind of cool, and I mean, it was nice. I wish we got so much more with Waffles, though. I want to see Hunter with his new talisman.
I know, that does remind me, we got very little Hunter content, which is understandable considering how much he dominated the first two season 3 episodes, but I'm a little sad because he had some important character growth going on here that was just kind of pushed aside for the purpose of developing the climax.
But like again, I feel
I
like
mean,
it was
it's
still
not like it feels.
resolved.
It doesn't feel unresolved, but I still wanted to see more of him, like, being able to say things and do things a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I loved the second episode where he's finally able to, say like, "Oh, all of you guys are important to me." But yeah, it would have been nice to see more, especially with him and Waffles. I just want more Waffles content. And I loved seeing too that the main group, they all have little flapjack tattoos.
What?
Again,
Where?
go back and watch all of so like Hunter, Luce, Amity, Willow all have Hunter flapjack tattoos, and Gus
Where?
presumably
On their
has
arm?
one. They're all like in different places. So like Willow, I think Willow is the easiest to spot. She has it like on her shoulder. And then like Luce has it like on her upper arm. I think Amity has it like you can see between her glove and her sleeve. It's like on her lower arm. Hunter, I'm forgetting. Gus, no one's been able to see it yet, but like he has one, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Flapjack was just a great character.
yeah.
Standout of season 2 and season 3.
Yeah, Flapjack for best character.
I don't know about best, but definitely like one of the best.
Okay, yeah, maybe not the best, but like definitely he's up there.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about best, but anyway. Yeah, no, and then the rest of like the end credits I think is just the best part. There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, so many things just thrown at you.
Yeah, I can kind of see like Ida being the headmaster of like the Wild Magic University, because I don't
I
think
mean,
it's like a real like accredited university. I think it probably is just like chaos of like people who kind of just want to experiment and learn more about things. So and I don't see her as being like an administrative like headmaster. I think she's just kind of symbolically there and like will pop in from time to time when she's not going around being Captain Hook. But it's like I was fine with that, and I liked seeing everyone else. Yeah, I mean Hunter, like it was cool seeing him being a talisman carver. I think that just
mm-hmm.
kind of really fits in. I kind of wish he like went to Earth and stayed there. I think that would have been really cool.
I mean, they can clearly travel between frequently, so
That is true. It's like maybe he does spend a lot of time on Earth. No, I do. I think that fit in really well. Like him as a talisman carver.
mm-hmm.
Gus as a teacher, I think was great. Willow
Oh,
as
is that what
a
he was?
yeah, he was teaching them about paper clips.
Oh yeah, I forgot about yeah, I didn't think of him as a professor when I saw that bit. I was just like, yeah, he's doing, I don't know what I assumed it was, but I didn't think he was a professor.
I think
Because I
he
mean, he's
is.
still like in high school.
Yeah, but he's smart. He skipped some grades. He could also just be like maybe he's a guest lecturer. We
Yeah, I
don't we
think I
don't
thought it
actually
was more
know.
of a one-time thing. That was more because I wanted him to have the full high school college experience before he has to take a whole job.
No, that's fair. And then I think like Willow does her flyer derby thing, which is okay. I don't have any strong feelings about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't care that her ending is like less specified, but they're all literally just graduating from high school, about to start whatever's going on in the rest of their lives. So I didn't mind so
Hmm.
much that it wasn't specifically stated what she's going to do, because they're at the point where they don't even know.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, it was also really funny, like some people who we do kind of know. Um, I think this is like the first divorce that I remember seeing in
What?
Disney with Amity's parents.
I don't remember what happened with her parents.
I think that was before the end credits, where Luce is saying like everyone was all right and they all had someone to go back to. And then it shows Amity like hugging Alador, and then like someone moves aside and you just see like Odalia like upset, leaning against the wall by herself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't assume it was. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't think of it as divorce, but like, yeah, I guess things would definitely be different after that.
Yeah, I mean, but then they have the follow up scene in the end credits where like Alador's doing his whole like removing the symbols on their arms,
Hmm.
and like there's definitely a moment with him and Darius.
I don't
So
remember, but you watched it twice.
I mean, I thought there was something. It seemed like a clear, if not a divorce, like a separation, and then Alador's moving on to Darius. I
Yeah,
think.
well, I mean, there's years in between those two scenes, anyways.
Yes. I thought that was just an interesting thing for Disney. I don't recall anything quite like that happening in a Disney show before.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, even to like hint at something like that is more than Disney usually ever would do.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny. And that's about. I mean, Amity, like, has her new blimp thing.
Hmm.
She's going on adventures.
Yeah, we didn't get enough Amity content either. I mean, we got sort of like, I guess Amity's big moment was more of the nightmare Amity. And like, why? It was so obviously not her, and that was some of the only content we got of her in the final episode.
Yeah. We could always use more Amity,
Yeah,
even though, again, it felt resolved. Just,
it did.
we
I
need
just,
more.
yeah. It's like, on the one hand, I understand why these characters were not focused on, but I still wish they were.
Yeah. And I think, like, the design for Amity, I just didn't care a lot about because I feel like there was so much, like, important symbolism going on with, like, her previous designs with the green hair and then, like, her purposely changing it to purple. So this to me, like, it was like, cool, she has, like, a new adventure outfit. And then that was kind of it. I thought her new design was cool. Definitely not my favorite, though.
Yeah, I think it was just a little bit more pink than I expected it. Other than that, I didn't really mind it. Her hair was a little bit longer, but again, I don't have any strong feelings about it.
I mean, if we got more time with her, like, maybe that'd be different. But it's fine.
Yeah, I think they were trying to go for like more like these kids are more mature vibe now because they're 17 or 18.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, she definitely looked a lot more mature. She kind of looks like Odalia a little bit, which is fair. It's her mother. But it's
I
interesting.
think it could just be because the ponytail and her mom always wore her hair back.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. I was getting Odalia vibes, but like a happy Odalia. She made the right decisions in her life.
Yeah, I like what they did with Emmerich and Emmerich and Emera. Is that their names?
Edric and
Edric.
Emera.
Okay, Edric. I like that they. At first, I was mourning the cool siblings gone because they were so cool when they were still wearing their glamours and everything. But I like that they leaned into the like, they're nerds and they're just embracing it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get much of them in this episode either, but like,
Yeah,
they're in
which
the
is fine.
background. I do love that we got more Principal Bump though.
Hmm.
He's so not my favorite character, but like he's really up there for me.
He ended up being a much better character than I ever thought he would be considering how he started.
He started kind of terrible, but like
Yeah.
he's a good. I want to backtrack that a little bit. He's a decent teacher.
he, he's decent. He cares about the kids in a unhealthy way sometimes where he, boiling Isles style punishments are just not healthy, perhaps, but their society is just very different.
He cares in an old school kind of way,
Yep.
which is like you want him to get with the times, but also like he cares
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah. And the Boiling Isles is just like such mayhem. They don't mind
Yeah.
that he's throwing kids into a detention pit. They're like, yep, that's normal. That's okay. Not child
I mean,
abuse.
that's really one of the only like terrible things that he does. I mean, also like the almost dissection of Luce, which I think can't be pointed out enough. But other than that, like I don't know. I mean, he had like a moment in season 1 where like some student kind of fails in magic and like inflates his head in like a really poor way, and Principal Bum's just like, "Wow, I failed you as a teacher." So I think like there's these moments of him like coming through and like you see that he does care and he like wants to be a good teacher. He just needs more people telling him like, yeah, you don't dissect students. You don't throw them in detention pits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of that is just larger societal problems for the Boiling Isles because, like, they're people eat people over there.
Yeah, that just happens.
So it's a little bit of a different rule set from the human world.
Yeah. So, but it was nice to see him like retire and now he's just gardening, which was really nice.
Yeah,
And he has this like glamour moment of him like just flying in with his lawn hair,
I
which
love
was really
that.
funny.
There were several moments that felt very like, that is so anime. Mostly when Luce had her whole transformation and she was doing the magic fight, and I was like, this is an anime moment. But that was also an anime moment.
I just thought that was great. Principal Bump is one of my heroes of this show.
Yeah, he turned out to be pretty great.
Yeah. I think that's kind of it though. And then like Luce obviously gets to come back and study in the Boiling Isles, which is nice. I think her story was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I mean, it was implied, but I like that they implied that she had more of a healthier, in between relationship with going to the Boiling Isles and then coming back home. And it wasn't just like, I must choose one or the other, because of course she doesn't have to. Although I have questions about how the portal works with the Titan dead, but I'm just going to chalk it up to either King or the Collector figured that out.
Well, it seemed like Collector because they have the whole like watch your step thing that the Collector says when the door opens. So I'm assuming Collector,
Okay, I forgot he said that.
but I don't know. But yeah, no, it was nice seeing like her not have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Which like other shows have done that, and I think they've done it really well. Like again, Amphibia I think is amazing, and they like make Anne make that decision. But for this story, like I don't think that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice like not having her choose, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
It's one of my least favorite morals in any kind of fantasy story where it's like you have to choose between the real world and the fantasy world and either literally give up your entire life on Earth or give up the fantasy world and like, throw away childish things. And I hate both of those options.
Yeah. No, this felt like a good in between answer. And not even an in between answer, it just felt like a good answer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a lot of, I guess, there's sort of a whole subgenre, not even subgenre, but just like a whole swath of fantasy that just basically is like you can only have one, like Narnia, where they grow up and it's like once you grow up, you have to stop going to Narnia. Yeah, and it's like, what's the point of having this whole travel between worlds if they can't just keep doing it? Like, why introduce this mechanic only to lose it?
I mean, like, I understand it, and like, there is an element of like, adulthood is very different from childhood. Like, you can still have fun, like, do some fantasy esque things too. So, I don't think like Narnia or Amphibia is like the wrong answer. I don't think the Owl House is the right answer. I don't think it's the wrong answer. Like, I just think these are all different answers.
It is the wrong answer for me, but that's because I hate those kinds of stories.
Yeah. But like fair, like again, for you. I think we all like, enter into adulthood and let go of or hold on to childhood in different ways.
Yeah,
So I do really, I think the Owl House is like the answer that I want. So I really like it over those other stories. I see like where those other stories are coming from, I think.
I do, but I also just don't like the way that they equate, the whole ability to like go in between fantasy worlds with the whole put away childish things kind of mentality, because it just, to me, it limits the whole scope of the story that you can create, where you can just have, people going back and forth and, you know, maybe constant mayhem, or maybe they come up with this really convoluted customs system. You don't know. I just feel like the forcing of a choice, to me, ruins the magic a little bit.
I think overall, my other question is now that we've seen the end of the series, like, what are your just overall thoughts on the Owl House as a show?
I think it did really well, and like the message it was trying to send is partly like you don't have to choose, you just like, being yourself is enough, and, finding the people that, respect you and are willing to, help you thrive and grow as your true authentic self is, fantastic. And I think it succeeded in what it was trying to do. I wish it was longer, but I think it did its job and did it pretty well. I'm not a fan of all of the things, like the collector, I'm still not the biggest fan of, but I also do have a bias against like childish characters like that. I think overall it did a good job and I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think the series was really good. I remember seeing season 1 and I was like, okay, this is good. Not my favorite, but like it was good. And then season 2 was amazing. And season 3 I feel like is somewhere kind of in the middle. But I think overall the show was really good, and I love the messages. I love Belos as a character. Like I think he might be my favorite character just because he relates so much to like what my thesis was about in college. So I think he was like super interesting, and I think that's part of why season 2 is so amazing. Like you see more of him and you kind of understand how he moves through the world in a way that is just the opposite of how Luce does. So I really love that. Amity and Luce like are both close like second favorite characters. There's just so much going on with them that's really great. And in general, yeah, it was really good. I think like there's some inconsistencies throughout. One thing I will always point to is that Hootie in season 1 is just not the same character as Hootie in season 2. I don't know why they changed him so much, but like I don't know. So there's like some kind of random inconsistencies going on, but like season 2 really just was so good that it kind of makes up for that. And yeah, I'm kind of curious like if we had gotten a season 3 how the show would have turned out. But in general, I think it was good. I don't think it's nearly as good as like Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts was for me, but it's up there. It's one of my favorite shows for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I would need to have it percolate a little bit more to think of a ranking, but it, it met the need that I had as a viewer, at least. So it satisfied me watching it.
Yeah. I mean, it was really good. It was really different. Definitely like I enjoyed it a lot more than most shows I can think of, like other than Kipo. In general, I think it was really good. Not my favorite show, but like almost.
I think they did well considering that they didn't have the season 3 that they planned. They still stuck the landing pretty well, considering, which ending shows can be really hard to do. And there's plenty of shows that I've watched that, I was enjoying it right up until it got to the end, and then they did poorly.
Yeah. No, they did a great job getting it to a satisfying ending. And I also just want to shout out like the music in this episode too. I thought this was a standout in the series. Did some good stuff going on musically speaking.
I'm sure it was good. It was part of the experience, but I didn't particularly take note of it.
That's fair. I did. It was great. Anything that we missed that you want to say?
Well, I like that Camila, was still part of the episode as much as she could be. And especially just the part where Luce kind of like fake dies, and the episode's only half over, so there's no way she's actually dead because half the episode hasn't happened. But it still felt really emotional when Camila is like let out and they're like, we don't know where Luce is. And she's like, being the adult and clearly saying, like, I'm sure she's okay. She's a Nocera. And it's just like so great to have an actual adult around in that kind of fantasy setting who's like supporting the younger characters and doing what needs to be done instead of just, either putting up obstacles needlessly or throwing them into dangerous things because they're irresponsible. But actually seeing her like, taking responsibility but still letting them have autonomy in that way, which I think is just, again, she's a great character and such a rare example in like younger age fantasy protagonist stuff where, actually finding that balance between having, you know, young people in dangerous situations and still having them being able to do some things without it being, totally neglect or awful.
Yeah. No, I feel like most of the cartoons I watched like as a kid, the parents were all like just these weird like they made no sense and they were always like just over the top. And Camila is just so like grounded and amazing and like I just love her character. I thought it was interesting having her as like this almost kind of antagonistic force in like the first season. I loved seeing like having that realization of like, oh, she really does care in season 2. Although I think like we already understood that in season 1. I don't think she was ever like evil. And everyone who was like, she's a terrible parent for sending Luce to this camp, like it's a bad decision, but like understandable. You know, you don't bring live snakes to school for a book report. So like I understand where Camila was coming from. And then I love spending more time with her and Luce together in season 3. I think that was a highlight of these final episodes for me, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, yeah, also just the fact that she was present because, I mean, if parents aren't neglectful, then they're just like not there at all. And either it's or very conveniently orphans, or it's like the Pokemon syndrome where he calls his mom like once a year.
I don't know how Pokemon is okay. Like Ash just goes and he's like he's I think he's like 10.
Yeah, he is canonically 10
Canonically 10 for like, 20
ever.
years. And yeah, his mom's just like, go take your electric mouse and wander the world and you might die a few times, but it's okay. Like you just need to call every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
With
Camila is not that, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I do think it can be a difficult needle to thread where you have a character that is a parent that is actually responsible, but still lets the kid get into adventures. Because most parents would just like say no. But I'm very glad that we have at least this little bit of an example of it. That's not just, the poor orphan Baudelaire children where they're like getting into everything because all the adults around them are awful.
Yeah. No, characters are separated from their parents like way too often in
Yeah.
stories. So this was a nice change.
Mm-hmm.
And Camila's just amazing, so a very nice change.
I'm glad we didn't have to have any sad orphans.
Yeah. I would have loved to see her interact with Ida a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah, that would have been nice. I understand there was not enough time.
Yeah. And I'm sure like we can all imagine, them having a lovely time chatting with each other in the next couple years.
That does remind me. There was a thing about apple blood, and now I'm wondering, is apple blood alcoholic? Because there's like a photo of Camila trying apple blood, and they have their apple blood big jug, but also wine glasses. And I'm thinking, has Ida been drinking something alcoholic for breakfast like every day?
I can see it.
I mean, yes, but it also just makes me think of her character a little bit differently.
Yeah, it doesn't really change that much for me.
I don't know. I just would assume she would not want to get buzzed like for breakfast.
Okay. I see it. I don't
Yeah,
approve of it. I think she needs to make some better choices, but like I think it fits her character a lot.
I mean, it definitely fits her character. I just wish it wasn't so.
Oh well. Oh, and the only other thing that I want to mention too is that like I think the whole genre of like horror in this show has been an interesting experience as someone who doesn't really like horror. And I think this is very different from like the kind of like horror movies that like I've seen before slash am aware of. Like I still don't like if there's jump scares. Like there was just a jump scare in Star Wars, and I was like, oh nope, this is not a scene I will be rewatching ever. So like there's still things that I don't like about it. And I remember like I've seen one horror movie like all the way through, and there was another one that I saw like 10 minutes of, and then I made my cousins change it and we watched Megamind instead, which was so much better. But I think this was an interesting way to watch horror in a way that like it didn't feel that scary. It felt like I mean, it was definitely like really impactful to the story. And I think like done in such a way that it didn't feel like unnecessarily scary. It just felt like it was pushing the characters along their paths. So I appreciated it. I don't think I would ever watch anything horror made for adults. I think it was helpful that this is technically for kids, because I think this is like right at the edge of what I'm okay with.
Yeah, I think some of the horror-ish elements, especially like the bellows gloop, um, were really well done in some of the most compelling parts of this episode. And I'm also not a very much horror fan. I don't enjoy being scared per se, although there are certain things I've watched that in like use horror elements, and I think that can be done really interestingly, especially combined with the fantasy elements. And I'm just thinking of something like the anime Mushishi, which is awesome, but it also kind of combines some of the like, well, it's set in like the real, quote unquote, real world in Japan, but involving sort of people in kind of horrifying situations sometimes. But it's not for the point of like, I guess it's for the point of driving the story, where I think horror is more of like the point of the story is to like make you feel afraid and scared. And I mean, not to say that there aren't deeper meanings and things and themes for horror, but like it's meant to, you know, draw up a lot of a specific type of emotions, which are being scared, and you know, there's typically a lot more gore. And of course, the Owl House does not have the gore, thankfully.
Yeah, I would not watch it if it did.
Yeah, I mean, I would. My mileage can really vary because like Tarantino gore is like different from, you know, I can't think of anything else. I've seen some Tarantino and like I can. It depends on what I can stomach and how it's presented to me. But you know, I'd say I would not watch a TV show that was like every episode you will have to see something really violent. Like I can handle it in movie format because it's a movie. But I think the Owl House did well in balancing the horror elements because I think they propel the story, but they're not trying to, you know, immerse you in, you know, being afraid all the time. Like there are some other sort of fantasy-ish story or TV shows like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which I have not watched and I was not interested in watching because it looked like it leaned further into the horror than I wanted it to. Because even if the story is interesting, that balance just wasn't quite right from at least my outside judgment of it, not having seen it. But it definitely does create a compelling atmosphere where things actually do matter, because I think part of the whole horror-esque aspect of it is that pain can happen and danger is real, which, I mean, is true for other things like action, adventure, fantasy, of course, but it just feels more real and more like psychologically present in something that leans into the horror aspect, whereas adventure, it's like that your protagonist can get injured, but you're there for the adventure. You're there for the fight. You're not there because you're thinking what's going to come out of there, and like your character feels a lot more vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, I think the horror is so impactful in this show, like, because again, it's not there just to make you scared. And usually, like, I don't think I really felt scared throughout this story. It's kind of there to show you, like, this world on its surface is horrifying, and that's kind of what Bellows is trying to say. But the real horror is Bellows himself and like his intolerance and his unwillingness to learn, and him basically just being a 1600s missionary. So I think like the horror,
Colonizer.
yeah. So I think the horror like shows it, like emphasizes those things. It usually didn't feel like unnecessarily there. Like at its core, like this still is. I would still say this is a fantasy story, and the horror just accentuates those points. Yeah, if there was ever a moment like, because in general, like I wouldn't watch a story where I felt like the point was just to scare me, which is why like when the one horror movie that I saw that I like changed to Megamind, like I didn't see any point to it. I just saw like it felt like most of it was just like we want to give you like nightmares and like make you feel like the emotion of fear. That to me, like maybe that's interesting, and I'm sure some people enjoy that. That's not what I like. I like stories. I don't want to just feel fear. I like going to bed at night. So I think Owl House did horror in a way that was interesting and thankfully not too scary. Like I think there's a difference between horror and like the concept of horror and being scared.
Oh yeah, because I mean, definitely there was a little bit of like, I guess I was gonna say body horror, but now I don't know if that fits. This fits the actual definition of what body horror would be. But Bellows, his goop in like parasitizing Rain's body and also Hunter's body is like kind of staple possession for horror and very creepy and
Yeah, that was
very well
almost a
done.
little too much for me. Like the stuff with Bellows, the last two episodes.
I'd say when he was possessing the bodies, it didn't ick me out as much as when he crawled out of the vat and was just like goop and bones.
That was
That
terrible.
was,
That's one of my least favorite parts of the show.
I was like watching and being like, I'm not going to rewind this, but it's very compelling, very good story. And I think not necessarily that, I guess, horror's entire point is to scare, but the balance of the emotions is not what I want to feel in a story in horror.
Yeah. Which again, like the Owl House balanced what it was trying to say and like the use of horror
Mm-hmm.
in a really great way.
Yeah. And I do think it was very clever the way I think Rain also had the scarring on their face from Bellos's like goop streaming down their eyes on their cheeks. Like it were those also scars like what Hunter had, or were those just like tear tracks?
I think those were also like scars, but I could be very
Yeah.
wrong.
I was interpreting it as scars, and I thought it was a very good like connection with Hunter being possessed and having scars from where the goop was on him, and Rain also having scars on their face, which is just like very dramatic, but also I think one of the good things about horror is the way it shows you how deeply like a person can be affected psychologically and emotionally, and not just physically. Because horror is like there's obviously the slasher kind of horror where you're just like killed dead, But a lot of horror is like the person just spends a whole lot of time feeling afraid and terrified. And, the sequels can show, the trauma continues for the franchises. So it gets a lot into your head. And this Owl House definitely, shows some of the deeper impacts, I think, emotionally through the using horror-ish aspects.
Indeed. I'm just glad that it was a cartoon that's meant for younger audiences. Otherwise, I wouldn't watch it.
I might, but I'd just have to watch it during the daytime.
That might help a little bit. I don't know. I'm still one of those people who's like upset that there's now a lot of blood in Star Wars.
There
So,
is? Well,
comparatively speaking, yes. Not a
okay.
fan.
Like in Andor? This is a side note.
No, I think like when the sequel trilogy was coming out, I was like, wow, this is more violent than the first two trilogies. And I
I'm
wasn't a fan.
desensitized.
I'm still a child. I'm young at heart.
I watched Attack on Titan in high school, and I will not rewatch what I saw of Attack on Titan, and I only watched the first season. I will not rewatch because it got too dark. I don't like seeing all my characters die. That's another thing with horror where it's just like you can't get attached to your characters because they'll just die on you.
Except in Owl House, thankfully.
Poor Flapjack, though.
Except for Flapjack.
Thank you so much for listening to Determination, Deliberation, and Dragons. As always, you can find exclusive episodes on our Patreon. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Mel has been doing an amazing job on Instagram, so it's really worthwhile checking that out. But that's all from me. So, everyone, have a great day, a great night, whatever it is by you. And remember, don't let the day drag on.
I had a thought and now I'm just like losing it. But